This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the best online retailer for Magic the Gathering singles and sealed product, and GatheringMagic.com, the #1 source for Magic the Gathering news and content.
Hey guys, this is Jarvis Yu again with Gathering Magic. I'm finally back to record some videos with Vintage The Perfect Storm. I haven't played a lot of Vintage really in my life. I used to play a bunch back in 2007-2008 playing Bazaar Dredge. With the release of Vintage Masters on Magic Online, I've become interested in the format again. So I'd like to briefly go over the deck list that I'm playing. It's based off Reed Duke's top 4 list from Vintage Championships in Philadelphia last year. So let's break it down part by part real quick. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fast mana sources, or artifact mana sources, combined with 12 lands. So that's 24 mana sources. If you just look at the land count, that doesn't really tell the entire story, because 12 lands is not very many lands, or mana sources rather, but a total of 24 means it's a lot more reasonable. So after that we have 4 Duress, 4 Gitaxian Probe to find out what's going on with them, and to see if the way is clear to just try to kill them. We have an Imperial Seal, Vamp Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Grim Tutor, Demonic Tutor, as tutors that can find broken cards. We have a bunch of cantrips / Ancestral Recall, Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm, Sensei's Divining Top to a lesser degree. We have a Time Walk. Time Walk honestly not at its best in this deck, but it's still worth playing. Hurkyl's Recall might deserve some explanation. You can Hurkyl's Recall yourself with a bunch of artifact mana out to produce extra storm. More often than not, we need to Hurkyl's Recall to get rid of Sphere of Resistance, Lodestone Golem, and Thorn of Amethyst as the major cards that shut this deck down, because we kind of revolve around playing a lot of spells at once. We have 4 Dark Rituals and a Cabal Ritual. That's actually 29 mana sources if you count rituals as mana sources, which I do for this instance. Timetwister, Wheel of Fortune, Windfall. All of these are sort of must-counter cards versus the control decks, because if you just cast it, it's unclear what they'll have in their hand after it. They probably won't have the Force of Will anymore. Yawgmoth's Will is going to win most of our games, simply because it's so easy to cast a lot of spells off of it from your graveyard, such as replaying Black Lotus, replaying Lion's Eye Diamond, and then eventually casting a bunch of cantrips or whatever and playing Tendrils of Agony. We only have 1 Tendrils in our main deck. This sometimes leads to awkward corner cases where you cannot win the game as easily as you like, such as if Tendrils is in your hand and you activate Memory Jar or Wheel of Fortune or something similar. You have to do a little bit more work to win the game, but it's still doable. You have Necropotence, Yawgmoth's Bargain, and Mind's Desire as also bombs that will essentially win the game if you cast them with any regularity. Desire means counter magic is easier to fight through because you can just play a bunch of rituals into the Desire. If they don't counter one of the intermediate rituals, the Desire will just reveal a bunch of cards and we can play them for free. Bargain and Necro. Necro means you cannot kill them on this turn. Bargain generally means you can, because the cards go into your hand instantly, whereas Necro has kind of strange wording. You put your cards into your hand at beginning and end step, which means you obviously can't kill them at instant speed. In the sideboard we have 3 more Hurkyl's Recall. to bring in versus the Workshop / Sphere Resistance decks. Thoughtseize is another anti-combo / anti-control card, along with 3 blasts. An empty is a backup win condition, and good versus the decks where you can't really necessarily Tendrils them for lethal because of spheres. Pyroclasm, I might try Toxic Deluge at some point, but Pyroclasm is mostly for fish and hate bear decks. Blightsteel turns our Tinker into an easier way to win. 4 anti-dredge cards, and a basic island, which also comes in versus workshops. So that's the deck. I would say this deck is probably easier to play than Legacy Storm, because it more revolves around casting bomb after bomb until you run your opponent out and they die. Run your opponent out of counter spells and they eventually succumb to your overwhelming advantage. But yeah, that's the deck, and I look forward to seeing how it plays out in these games. Alright, here we go, match 1. 1 die roll. Yes, I would like to play first. Alright, this is kind of a mana heavy hand. I think we can do better, so I'm going to mulligan. This hand is good. Trying to figure out if we can kill them on turn 1. So this is 3, 5, 6, 8 mana with a jar. So we'll have 3 floating afterwards. Oh, and our opponent's playing Dredge. So we need to kill them pretty quickly. Don't necessarily need to try to turn 1 them. So let's see what happens. If I do it with 3 floating, I mean, I don't think things are going to get better for me. I don't necessarily need to crack the jar, but I won't have black for the ritual. So I think I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to use 2 colorless, 3 black, cast this. I'm going to crack the jar now. That was not very good for us. If I waited to crack the jar, it would have been pretty reasonable. So I guess... Oh, this was bad actually, maybe because the jar puts his things in the graveyard. If he has another Bazaar, I might just die. So I need to try to kill him with recall, by recalling ourselves, I guess. Alright, so what can we do from here? Not much, really. So it's 2, 3, 4 with a blue. Yeah, let's keep going. Find out what happens, I guess. So I think I have to bottom both. Yep. Alright, Duress him twice, I guess. Not really much that's great to Duress. We're probably dead next turn. Which is kind of unfortunate. Well, luckily... So he mulliganed to Bazaar, probably, which means he can dredge Dredge 10, I guess, because he hit a troll. He therapies us, probably misses. But yeah, that was maybe a little bit loose. I probably could have just played Jar and passed, or just waited another turn to try to do things, because having an extra mana there would have helped a lot. We need to draw a Timetwister, I think. It's interesting he would name Will when I can't even play it next turn. And there's only one in the deck. I think he should therapy me for Hurkyl's Recall because it's +2. Alright, well, we have to fire this off. Alright, so if I survive the turn, I can maybe win the game with Yawgmoth's Will. That's a big if. Surviving, that is. Because I think he can dredge the rest of his deck. Maybe he has no Dread Return in his deck? That's what it looks like. Or it's in the last 5 cards. Or he's going to therapy himself twice. Wait. Okay, so I need to Mystical for Yawgmoth's Will. Don't think I'm dead, but... And now we pray. Does he have any therapies left? He's 3 therapies exiled? Interesting. I guess the 4th therapy could be in his hand and he'll therapy himself for Flamekin Zealot and Dread Return. Okay, well, we get another turn and he's probably dead. Alright, Lotus. It's gonna be a giant storm count. Lotus Petal. Crack this for black. Play Dark Ritual. Crack this for... Let's see. They took away the storm counter, which is somewhat annoying. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tutors 5. Ancestral 6. Alright, well. I can just... Actually, Ancestral first, I guess. See what I draw. can play Wheel. These two will get exiled to the will, but I think that's fine. Oh, actually Will just kills him by decking him. Alright, very good. That was cute. I haven't seen that come up that often. Alright, for the sideboard, Duress pretty bad versus him. I want all of these, and I want the Blightsteel to tinker for. I think I can take out Windfall on the draw, because he empties his hand pretty quickly. I'm satisfied with this, I think. Okay, so we can actually seal off of Jet to get a hate card and just play it, which I think is probably pretty good. Remember, it doesn't really matter how low he mulligans, because his deck always does the same thing, pretty much. Well, that was the card I was going to tutor for, actually, so it's pretty reasonable. Now, I think... I'm trying to think if I can assemble a turn 2 kill. We have a bunch of mana. So, I can Jet Seal for Black Lotus. Next turn, probably Grim Tutor for Yawgmoth and kill him. But I'm gonna probe first. I mean, alright, that's about expected. This can bring back excess bazaars that are dredged up, which is pretty insane. It's kind of slow, but I think it's pretty good. So we can actually ponder then seal, which might be a little bit better. Yeah, the land's good. Enough, I think. Black Lotus. I'm just gonna play out all of our artifact mana. We're gonna have plenty of Storm next turn, I think, so I just don't want him to randomly therapy it. I should set a stop on my opponent's draw, because that's when he'll have the most in his graveyard before having priority to like Cabal therapy me or anything. Okay, so I know his entire hand. I could just crypt him here, and I think that's good enough, so I'm going to. Because his hand is... Well, I guess I don't technically know his entire hand. That might have been loose. If he drew a second Bazaar, it was bad. This graveyard is Bridge. That's good for me. I think he's probably dead. So... I can Lotus... With Grim Tutor on the stack, we're going to want to crack it for mana. Probably 3 blue. Oh, I should have used a colorless off my Soul Ring. That was kind of loose. I could get Bargain as well, but I think that actually leads to more awkward things. Let's see, I would have a black floating, no land played, and 14 cards to work with. I'm just gonna get Will, because we end up with at least a Mox Crypt in play. I think this should be good enough because, yeah, my opponent says he would play this deck. But it's not exactly cheap to build right now. Luckily I have some very generous friends, which is fortunate for me. Add 3 more black. Play Imperial Seal. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, so he's pretty dead. Probe for life because it doesn't matter what I do. Alright, he has 2 Stinkweedums and a Gemstone Mine. Very good. Grim Tutor. Guess Ancestral, doesn't really matter. Yeah. Ritual, because it doesn't really matter. Ponder, I guess. Again, doesn't matter that much. And a second crypt, just in case. Although, he doesn't really have anything. Alright, storm count 13. That's plenty. Alright, that's match 1.